Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Norris. It is time for a tech and real estate session, and I am here with Kenny Wyland and Kyle Humfeld of In a Day Development. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I've been using your product for at least the last 3 years, and it's my favorite calculator, and I think I have 3 or 4 on my iPad and iPod. And I've known Kyle's wife for a long time. We grew up together and sort of ran into each other in the real estate space and found out about the calculator you guys have. And because I'm in marketing and all the apps and stuff, I've been following you guys' work forever, including you also have an app for, what's the board game?
Cashflow.
Cashflow, which
Mm-hmm.
is also very helpful because it's such a pain in the butt writing everything down and keeping track of stuff. So
Really interferes with the learning process, that part of that game.
yeah, it really does, and it slows it down a lot. So anyway, big fan of your work. So today we're going to be doing an introduction to the financial calculator and the app that you guys created, and I think it's a key piece that doesn't get talked about a lot, oddly enough. I don't think I was introduced to it until Bill Tan. Luckily, I took his class before I had to deal with financial calculator in my MBA program. I would not have been prepared, so it's been fun. So introduce yourselves and how you got started, how you guys met.
Well, we met in college. We went to USC. Fight on.
Fight on.
We met doing nerdy things, and we...
And we've both been programming for almost as long as we could read and talk and all that stuff, because we basically came up right around the time the computers were becoming home computers and you could actually do that kind of programming. So we've been programming for a long time. Both of us like the sort of rapid prototyping that goes into computers, and we also have the primary virtue of any computer scientist, which is laziness. Because I don't want to do work, so I'll make the computer do the work for me. You solve the problem one time, and then it replicates.
Right, why would I want to do all that work again when it can do it for me?
Yeah.
You know?
I think most people look at a page of code and like immediately get the dry heaves. So,
Well, that's one of the things that I think we're very fortunate in that we really enjoy this kind of thing. When I was working for a corporation, I would code all day and then go home and continue coding on my own stuff because I actually just really enjoyed it.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
a
creative
sickness.
problem solving, right? I mean, it's a type of creative problem solving that doesn't rely upon unreliable aspects like other people. So
Right.
So there are a lot of things to like about it, and when your aptitudes line up with it, it's very gratifying to be able to say, "Hey, look, I've solved a problem in a way that nobody else has ever solved before. I've made my life easier. I've manifestly made somebody else's life better." In the case of a financial calculator, I've enabled people to invest more wisely with more information and overall do a better job.
And for really inexpensive. I mean, how long has the calculator app been around?
4.5 years.
4.5, yeah.
Wow. And so you've got colleges downloading this app now, and it makes it so user-friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to really focus on that. We are our own users as well. As real estate investors, we use this calculator on a daily basis, and so we want it to work as well as possible and be as understandable as possible. When we first learned how to use a financial calculator, we noticed there were the same problems that people would experience when learning how to do it, and so we figured that we could make that process a lot easier. We bring very similar perspectives on software development to the table, but also very different ones. We have had different experiences throughout our career. When we both graduated, it was right in the middle of the .com cycle. So,
really?
When I went out into the world, I got hired as employee number 6 in a small little .com, and I got the whole cliche experience of,
wow,
we don't need to make money, we can just go get some, and
The expensive office furniture for no reason. And
yeah, that $1,200 paper lamp that you could have probably gotten for $20 at IKEA. So yeah, I got to experience all of that, but thankfully I made it through that to a .com that actually survived because they were making a good product and they were successful, and that company was good enough that they got acquired by Google, and so I had the privilege of working at Google for several years, which was a great experience, learned tons. So, but each of the companies that I've worked for over time have been very fluid, very, sort of edge of your seat, ask forgiveness rather than permission type of companies. But that's been a very different experience from Kyle.
In stark counterpoint to that, even before I graduated from college, I had a job working for an aerospace company. At that time, it was McDonnell Douglas. It was right before they got acquired by Boeing. And so day one at Boeing, I was already an employee. That was in August of 1997. And so when I walked in there to like kind of do my interview to see whether I wanted to work for them, I was the youngest person in the building by like 30 years.
Wow.
So they were not really on the bleeding edge of technology. And then I very soon thereafter got into the like security clearance space. And so as opposed to this sort of like seat of your pants kind of like jury rig stuff together, they're much more conservative with the way things work. They're much more regimented. And I started working for a guy who had a real vision for the way that technology could be used even within that sort of confined area and the sort of local internal networks that weren't connected to the internet at all, in order to make things operate more efficiently. And he was a really good leader in that he set the vision, but then enabled me and a very small team of other people to go forth and do good work for people. And sort of under the auspices of that, I gained a lot of experience, was able to help a lot of people out until the big stampy foot of IT justice came down, found out what we were doing, and tried to put the kibosh on it, which they were ultimately successful in doing last October when I got laid off. And so I've been working on this full time ever since. No, but that's not at all a bad thing.
Congratulations.
Right?
Yes, congratulations.
Yeah.
It's not easy to go on out on your own and to have stuff that people like and are downloading.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, the key there for anyone that is considering doing their own thing and that actually has their own like a steady job right now is keep doing your job, do the thing on the side. And two things that, I mean, the hardest part about doing something on the side is actually doing it, because by the time you get done working at work, you don't want to do anything else. And the other thing is get a partner, because if I decide to slack off tonight and I don't have a partner, I'm letting myself down. But big deal, I'm easy to forgive. If I have a partner, I'm letting him down, and I can't do that. Because he's not going to let me down, so I can't let him down, right? So that has been instrumental to the success in building the discipline to actually do the work.
Wow.
When a lot of the time there's just I don't like this is the last thing I want to do, but it's one step forward every day will eventually get you to the end of the race.
So
was this your first app, the financial calculator? Was this your first foray into
24th app? I want to say.
Wow. Yeah. No, we decided to start making apps because, we were working for companies and not super happy about it, right? But we figured that apps were on the way up. We had tons of software experience, and we could start making money on the side, like Kyle said. And so we actually got a book. We read it together, literally, and
kind of
learned
through
how to
the
do
little
it.
examples and but what if we did this other thing? Oh, how could we make, here's some little functionality here. What if we wanted to do this extra 2 or 3 things? Like, how would we do that? And so that's kind of the way you learn programming.
Okay.
Yeah. So we made, once we got through that, we made our first app. It was incredibly stupid.
Really stupid. No one should ever buy that.
Really stupid. But we made it in one day. And so we named our company In a Day Development.
Okay, that's where that came from.
Yep.
Got it. All right.
And it's a completely stupid app, but people still buy it. So.
What is this app?
It's called Your Mom. It's a big red button, and when you tap the button, it just says, Your Mom! Your Mom! Like I said, it was really stupid. We warned you.
Yeah.
Hey, you buy those little plastic things at the like Spencer's Gifts, right?
Exactly
with all
right.
the different sounds. I get it. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Who doesn't need a Your Mom button?
Everybody.
Everybody does.
And clearly Staples got a hold of it and, just turned it into...
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. All right, well, shall we get started? And
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So in addition to being professional computer nerds, we are real estate investors.
Yeah,
right?
cash flow investors.
And cash flow investors in general. So we own notes, we own rental real estate, so residential, some units.
We own part of a mobile home park as a part of basically an LLC that owns the park. We were invested in that. Okay. So basically, as Gary Johnston likes to say, if Tiddlywinks made money, we'd invest in Tiddlywinks. So we find stuff that produces cash flow, and we put cash into it in order to provide cash flow, because who doesn't like to eat, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we do choose real estate, right? This particular Tiddlywinks, because it does make that money, right? It does provide us that ability to make the investment up front, do some work up front, either buy that note or get that house and put a tenant in it, and then allow that cash to generate itself over time.
Yeah, and you can also take advantage of other stuff like depreciation and appreciation, and there are myriad benefits to this stuff. But one way or the other, cash flow is really where it's at. Not having a steady W-2 income anymore, that it's been really key to set that stuff up ahead of time. So having rental units is really, that's kept me off the streets.
Yeah.
Right. That's been helpful because unemployment doesn't pay that much, and they don't pay forever.
True. A little longer than usual, but not forever.
Right. And, it also helps you make that transition, right?
Yeah, big time.
Emotionally, it's a lot harder to let go of a job if you don't have any extra other money coming in. But if it's only one part of your income, then it's easier to step out on your own, right?
Yeah. Also, if like I'm spending 80% of my time on for the company and then 20% of time on my own thing, and I get laid off, now it's easy to go from 20% to 100%, but not from 0% to 1% or 100%.
Yeah. Now, there's lots of stuff that you have to keep in mind when dealing with real estate investing. Obviously, it's sometimes easier to deal with notes because you don't have to deal with property taxes or toilets or anything like that. But when you're investing in just rental real estate, you just take those things into account, right? You bring them into your calculation, and that's fine. It works out.
Right.
But one of the benefits that we do like about note investing in particular is that you don't need a giant pile of money to buy a note. You can use a reasonably small amount of money to buy a note because either maybe you're buying a second mortgage on a property in California that would normally be a huge thing, or you're buying the first mortgage, but it's in like Tennessee, and so it's much cheaper.
Right. And we're going to be talking about an example of a note that's based upon a real note that we own as a company. And not every note is like this, and if you're interested in notes, there are note brokers and financial advisors and stuff that can help you get into that space. But just take this as a good example. Now, obviously, there are lots of notes on the market, and it's really key, as with any investment, to be able to differentiate between a bum investment and a good investment, right?
And notes can get pretty creative with all the different terms.
They can. Yeah. And one of the things that I personally like about it is that there's a lot of flexibility in case things don't go optimally. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later also. So, it's super important, as with any investment, to be able to have the knowledge and skills and the tools necessary in order to be able to spot the good ones in the big field of bad ones, right? Mm-hmm. Or spot the ones that meet your criteria in the big field of stuff that doesn't. It's a classic needle and haystack problem.
Right. If you're trying to figure out, which $100 bill is the real one and which one is the counterfeit, they both look good if you don't look too hard, but as long as you have the right tools and knowledge, you can figure out which is the proper one. And some of these criteria that you use to evaluate these investments are based on numbers, right? How much is it going to cost? What's the value of the property? How much cash flow is it going to generate over time? If it's a rental real estate, what's the market rent in that area? All of these types of things. There are other aspects to the evaluation that aren't based on numbers. They're more qualitative aspects, like how nice is the neighborhood, right? That does factor into where you're making your investments.
Right. So one thing with notes is that you want to make sure that they're well secured by property that has some value. So if things go sour, then you have collateral that's worth something. Otherwise, your money could very easily be lost. Another thing, you want to make sure that you get your desired return. That brings up the question of, okay, so how do I figure out what kind of return I'm going to get, or what kind of return can I expect to get? And that's where we come back to needing a tool to be able to find that out for you. Now, if you hired a contractor to come and work on your house and he didn't bring any tools, then you would legitimately question whether he had the ability to perform that job. Similarly, you would not start building or working on a house if you didn't have the right tools. So you would not want to buy a house and not want to buy a note on a house without the right tools for that job. So what's the most important tool that any investor needs?
And that's a financial calculator, right? That's the tool that we've been taught to use and we use every day, and it's invaluable. It provides the information that you absolutely need, right? It's not 100% of the information. As we said, there are extra bits of information that go into making the decision, but without this as the foundation, a lot of those other decisions are sometimes guessing.
Right. So there are a bunch of different financial calculators that you can get. You go down to Best Buy or Staples or whatever, you can get these plastic bricks that, made by Hewlett-Packard and TI. Alternatively, you probably already have a smartphone in your pocket, and there are lots of different apps that you can download for that fill the same functions and many times even in a better way than the physical calculator would. Our company does make one of those. We think it's the best one out there. If you already have one, don't spend extra money. You don't get ours. If you're trying to decide which one to get, you can take our word for it. Ours is good. It's worth your money.
It is good, and I use it every week. And I love the interface. Like I said, I do have 2 other ones, and I don't know why they're still on there. I just need to delete it because it's more annoying when I start typing in calculator to search for it. I'm like, why did I open that one?
Yes, you should definitely get rid of those. We've spent a lot of time, as I said, watching people learn how to use the calculator and watching them use it so that we understand how to make it better, make it easier to use. We also deal with like the customer service requests from our customers. And so by answering those questions from real people really using the calculator, we've been able to find those pitfalls and help you avoid them to begin with. Now, when it comes to using a financial calculator, there are 5 parts, 5 bits of the question for what are called the time value of money equations. Or TVM for short. So we'll say TVM a lot.
Now, those 5 parts are time, the amount of time that the investment that elapses during the investment, the interest rate, rate of return or yield, the amount of money that changes hands today at the very beginning of the investment, the amount of money that changes hands at the very end when everything's said and done, and we're just about to wrap the whole thing up, and then the amount of money that changes hands regularly in between. The most common way that happens is every month, a monthly payment on a car loan, a monthly payment on a home loan, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or collecting rent.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Now, the financial calculators have a button for each of these bits of information right along the top. Okay, and we can go through those again. So this N button on the left, this is the amount of time until the end of the note or the loan or the cash flow essentially. So it's N because it's the number of times that the payment happens. Okay, so in like a 30-year mortgage, their N is 360 because there are 360 months in 30 years, right? So when you're paying a 30-year loan to like a bank, that's 360 payments. So that's why we make N360.
Right. Next one is IYR, which is interest rate per year, sometimes also referred to as return on investment or yield. And those terms all vary in very subtle ways, but we're going to use them interchangeably here. Now, it's important to understand that this is I/YR, that's per year. So this is an annualized return. So if you go to the bank and you get a mortgage with 6% interest, that's going to be an annualized rate, not a monthly rate. So this is one of the most common things that you're going to want to calculate when you're evaluating an investment, because everybody has a target of how much money does my money need to earn, and that's going to always be on an annualized return basis.
The third one is PV. It stands for present value. It's the amount of money that is going to change hands right now, today. So if you're getting a mortgage from a bank, that's going to be the loan amount. That's how much money is, or value that the bank is giving you right now. If you're going to be buying a note, the present value is how much money you're going to be spending on the note. That's the purchase price for the note. So it happens one time, it happens right now, and that's the amount of money that changes hands in the current day.
So that's going to be the other thing that we're going to want to calculate a lot as a note investor in particular, but also as a real estate investor, right? Because that's going to tell you, okay, how much can I afford to spend for this house? How much can I afford to spend for this note and still hit my yield target? Mm-hmm. So we're going to skip the fourth one for the moment, and we're going to skip right on to FV, which is the future value. That's an amount of money that changes hands one time right at the very, very end. So it happens often in the future after the N number of payments. Now, a lot of the notes that you've ever heard of are fully amortizing. So fully amortizing 30-year home loan, FV is going to be 0. Your car loan, generally, that'll be fully amortizing as well.
because it's paid off by the end of it.
Right. Some loans, particularly ones that were made back in the heyday, back in like the 2003, 2004 era, they had balloons on them. So they would amortize for 5 years or 10 years, and then they would have a balloon on them where a bunch of money would be owed, and the loan was done after that, right? So the FV was the size of that balloon at the time.
Now, the last one is PMT. Obviously, that's the payment. Okay, that's the amount of money that is going to change hands every month between the PV and the FV, right? That's the monthly mortgage payment that you're going to be making, or it's the note payment you're going to be receiving, the cash flow that goes back or forth. So this is going to happen n number of times, as we said. So in a 30-year mortgage, right, we're going to make 360 payments of the PMT amount.
Right. So every time value of money problem has those 5 parts. And the thing the calculator will do for you is that if you know any 4 of them, the calculator will find the 5th one. So we're going to break this down, and we're going to go through an example based upon a real note that we own. So in this setup, we know 4 of them, and we're going to find the 5th one.
Okay, so this note is going to pay for 5 years. All right, so that's 60 months. So N is going to be 60. We're going to be trying to find out what our yield is, right? We're going to pay for this note. It's going to pay us back. What kind of return on our money are we going to get? So we're going to leave this one blank for now. We're going to come back to it. We paid $10,000 for this note, or will pay $10,000 for this note. So the PV is going to be negative $10,000. Now it's negative because that money is going away from us. Think of it as the amount of money in my bank account is going to go down. So that's why this number is negative. Okay. The payment that we're going to receive every month from this note is $247. So our PMT is going to be positive $247. Right. This money is going to be coming to us. My bank account is going to be going up, so it's a positive number. And at the end, the note will be fully paid. So FV is going to be 0. No money is going to need to change hands at the end because it's going to be totally paid off. So we have 4 of the numbers that we want to calculate the 5th. So let's go ahead and actually show on our calculator how this works. So we're going to put in 60 into N. We're going to skip IYR. We're going to put 10,000 negative into PV. We're going to put 247 into positive into the PMT, and 0 into FV. So you can see the numbers right above the keys. This is one of the great features of the calculator. So you can know that you have all the right information in here. And then we can tap IYR, and we find out that this is going to give us a rate of return of 16.72%. That sounds pretty...
Where do I sign up?
Well, don't be too quick. That can get out of hand on you pretty quickly, as we'll see. We're going to talk about a little bit more about this note.
So hopefully that makes sense conceptually, that when we knew the 4 different things, we were able to calculate the 5th one. Now, as I mentioned before, calculating IYR is one of the most common things that you're going to want to do as a note investor. As an investor, you inevitably have a target of return that you know that your money needs to make in order to reach your investing goals. So being able to calculate IYR tells you what kind of return you're getting on your investment, and that allows you to evaluate whether or not this investment is compatible with your investing goals. Now, there are some people who want 10% is their target, 12%, 16%. One way or the other, being able to calculate IYR will help you to ensure that you're hitting your target. Mm-hmm. Now, the other main common calculation that we're going to want to do as investors is a PV calculation, present value calculation, and that's going to tell us how much we can spend for a particular investment, a house or note or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and go through an example of that with a note. So let's say that there's a note for sale. It pays for 120 months. It pays $240 a month, and the person who's selling this note wants $20,000 for it. At the end, it's fully paid. There's no balloon or anything like that. So you've got $20,000. You could buy it, but is it good enough, right? Is that compatible with your investing needs? So we're going to go ahead and go through the calculation on the calculator, and we'll find out what the yield is.
All right, so we'll clear out our calculator and make sure that we don't make any mistakes.
Right, so N, we're going to put 120 because it pays 120 months. We're going to put a negative $20,000 in PV because that's the asking price for the note. And if we pay that, money will be going away from us, so it's a negative number. and let's see, $240 a month in PMT, and 0 in FV because it's fully amortizing. Now,
any guesses? Do you want to take a guess?
Ooh, no, I have no idea.
All right.
it's 7.75%. So is that good enough? It could be.
Right. It depends on your needs.
Probably better than you're getting at the bank.
Yeah, probably 10 times better than you're getting at the bank.
Yeah. I don't know. I am getting a 0.01% at the bank. So
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's say, for the sake of argument, though, that my investing goal is 10%, right? So 7.75% is all right, but I need to get at least 10%. So clearly, if I were to pay $20,000, that would be an overpayment, right? So I need to pay less than that. So how much can I pay?
Right. So what we would need to do is a very similar calculation. We still need 4 pieces of the information, but it's going to be a different 4 this time. So it's still going to pay, the note is still going to pay for 120 months. That doesn't change. Instead of calculating the IYR, we're going to set that at 10 because that's our desired rate of return. That's the interest rate that we want to get. The bit of information we don't have at the moment is PV. That's the amount of money that would change hands now. That's the purchase price on this particular note. And that's what we're trying to figure out. So we'll leave that one blank. It's still going to pay $240, right? The terms of the note haven't changed, and it's still going to be fully paid at the end. So what we can do is we'll put 10% into IYR, and then we will recalculate the PV. So the most that we can pay is $18,161 for this note if we want to get a 10% return on our money. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right. So, as with many things in capitalism, sales price could well be negotiable, right? It's possible the note broker, the guy who owns this note, maybe he picked it up for 10 grand and he was hoping to get 20 grand out of it, but if he can get 18, maybe that's okay with him. And if so, then you give him your 18,000 and you walk away with your 10% return and everybody's happy. If he bought it for 19,500 and he can't afford to sell it to you for 18,100, then maybe the answer there is no. And then you have a choice to make. Do I compromise my goals and buy something that doesn't meet my yield target, or do I pass on this and look for the next deal? Now, I'm not an investment advisor, but I highly recommend that people don't compromise their investing goals just because they're married to the idea that this one particular investment is the only fish in the sea, because it's not. Right? It's just a matter of you. So if this one doesn't do it, find the next one. So having that constant stream of inventory in front of you is one of the fundamental problems when doing investments, because you're going to say no a lot more than you're going to say yes, because typically your targets are pretty high, and everybody's looking for high targets, and that's a pretty limited pool.
Yeah.
And while it's always important to I agree with Kyle that's sticking to that principle, sticking to that desired return. Your goal is incredibly important. As Kyle just recently spoke about at an investor group recently, that quibbling isn't necessarily in your benefit. So if it turned out that it was a 9.9% return, are we really going to argue about that?
Right.
No, right? That's good enough. Okay. If my goal is 10, I'm not going to try and squeeze this guy for that 0.1%.
Yeah. I mean, the perfect doesn't need to be the enemy of the good.
Mm-hmm. So to be able to do these calculations, you have to have a financial calculator. There's really just there's no way about it, no way around it, because this math is you're not going to be doing this with a pencil and paper. You can do some of these calculations in Excel, and so there are some people who just prefer to do it that way, and that's fine. But I prefer to use a financial calculator, because it is specifically designed to do this thing really, really well. Right? You can do just about anything in Excel if you try hard enough.
But this type of calculator is focused on this type of problem.
Well, so it's really fast, and you can mess with all the different numbers. And Excel is a little bit clumsy, especially on. I've never tried to even use it on mobile, but I don't think it's very awful. Practical.
Yeah,
it's pretty awful.
It's a challenge. And more to the point, the equations that are built into Excel will find you numbers for even TVMs, right? Stuff that just has these 5. But one thing it's not super good at doing is modeling uneven scenarios.
Right. So we've been talking about situations in which everything goes smoothly, right? You buy that note or you buy that property, and then the monthly payments just roll in. The rent just rolls in every single month without a problem, right? And there are no extra expenses. And that's how everything works, right? Obviously not.
That's what the marketing material said.
So there's this extra feature of the calculator to do as uneven cash flows, as they're called, that Kyle was referring to. So now the original note that we had just talked about, where we spent $10,000 on it and we got $247 for 5 years, that's not what the note was to start. In the beginning, it was very different in the beginning, and what you're seeing here is actually how it ended up. That was how we sort of fixed the situation. So what really happened was we bought the note for $10,000, and the payer was actually supposed to pay about $325 a month, and he did so for a couple of months, but then he stopped paying. I think he lost his job, if I remember correctly. So we didn't get paid for several months after that. But we have a partner who we worked with on the deal, and thankfully, he helped us with a lot of this footwork. And eventually, the owner agreed to just sign over the deed to the house and move out. Right? We got a deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Yep.
Right, because foreclosure has negative aspects to the person who's getting foreclosed. That's a big black mark on the credit. The chances of him being able to buy or even rent someplace else would really be impacted by that. Also, for us, it would have been costly and time-consuming. Overall, just not a problem that anybody really needed to deal with, right? So there's a much more graceful option of just being able to give him a little chunk of cash in order to be able to move his stuff out of there, and he mails back the keys, and everybody goes their separate ways.
Cash for deed in lieu, huh?
Indeed. It makes it easy, and easy and fast are often better than cheap.
Yep.
Right?
Agreed.
So...
And overall, this wasn't that expensive either. I mean, this was cheaper by far than actually going through the judicial foreclosure.
Right, and depending on what state you're in, that foreclosure process can be... It's very different in every state. You have to make sure to check out the laws.
Yeah, note investing, you have to be sure what
Especially when dealing with owner-occupants.
Yes,
Right.
and homesteading and all that.
Yep.
And so while we are real estate investors where we buy and hold and we rent it out, in this particular situation, our goal was not to own the house. Our goal was to own a note that was producing cash flow. And unfortunately, now the situation was that we had a house. So we wanted to turn it back into cash flow. So what we did was we put a little extra money into the house to kind of fix it up a little bit. And then we put it on the market, listed it as owner will carry. So we were telling the market that we were willing to sell or finance it. Instead of, you don't have to go out and get a loan. You can pay your down payment directly to us and your monthly payments directly to us. Nice and easy. Everything will be great.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily have stellar credit, and as long as they pass some simple criteria on our side, we run them through a lot easier ringer than the bank does.
Right.
Right. So.
And so we were able to find a buyer.
Yes.
Who gave us the down payment. That's the $1,000 up arrow that you can see on this chart. And then they began making monthly payments to us, and that's that $247. Right? And it's been so far so good. They've been paying about 1.5 years. But in the end, when you look at this up down, like $10,000 down, and a couple of payments up, and then no payments, and then we had to put some money in to fix it up, and it's not so simple, right? It gets a lot dirtier in the real world. And financial calculators can help you handle this situation and really figure out, in the end, what was our return on that. We were expecting to get 16%-ish return, but really what did it end up being?
Yeah, just north of 15%. Right?
Yeah. So we've built in a specific interface in our calculator that lets you enter all of these numbers in a very visible, easy to understand fashion, and do that calculation. And so after all of the real world intervened, it ended up we got a 15% return on our money.
Right. So it wasn't what we had targeted for, but honestly, that beats our company's goals one way or the other. So we're satisfied with the deal. So it's really important to understand what your yields are, and more importantly, how the actuals compare with the expected on the front end of the deal. So if you do a lot of these deals and you find out that you're consistently getting a couple of percent below what you had predicted to get, then you need to bump your targets up a little bit so that what you end up with is more likely to hit your real target, right? So if I needed to get 10%, then and I found out that I was constantly getting a couple of percent lower, then now my target is 12%, so that I can then settle down into that 10%. Overall, that's the long and the short. Do you have any questions?
Were you going to show how to access that on the app? at least the area to do the uneven?
Sure.
Yeah, we can totally do that.
And I just wanted to bring up, I'm very visual. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not numbers oriented. So one of the reasons that I really like this calculator is that visual piece. So, you've been saying it, the cash flow coming in, the cash flow coming out. Sometimes the very first time people are using a financial calculator, those concepts are like, why am I putting a negative in front of the 10,000 kind of thing? I think it really, really helps.
And so keep in mind, this interface is a little bit different on the desktop than it is on the phone or the iPad, but they both work the same.
Okay.
And so we've got our cash flow diagram down here, and we'll add a couple of rows. So we originally invested $10,000, and it was negative, right?
Then we got $325 for.
Then we received $325 for 3 months. Okay, so that's positive number, and it happened this number of times. So we got 3 months worth of payments, and you can see the cash flow diagram is starting to build over time.
Okay.
But then he stopped paying, right? So we got $0, and I think that happened for 3 months.
Sure, let's say 3.
Let's say it's 3. And so we can see that, again, this is starting to build out.
We paid $900.
Then we paid $900, and that was to fix it up a little bit.
Do a little marketing.
Okay. And that happened one time, right? That was 1 month that we did that. So that was becomes a down arrow here, right?
Got it.
Then we received
money out.
$1,000 down payment.
$1,000 down payment, so that's positive because it's coming to us, and that happened once. Right? And then we started receiving our $247 every month for what should be 5 years.
Okay.
Right? And so now we can see
This is
that chart that we saw on the previous screen. And so we can take a look at our internal rate of return.
Right.
Just click IRR, and we get 16.63%.
So we must have screwed up one of the numbers.
So yeah, I think maybe it was only 2 months that we didn't receive payments, that would cause that number to be slightly
or
different.
2 months that we got the 325.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if I go back and look, I'll get it right.
That's very cool.
One other thing is that so this is keep in mind that we are not at the end of the movie yet. We've only received maybe 18 of those $247 payments. So we can actually calculate what has our return to date been. We might even be negative because we haven't gotten all of our capital back. But why don't we find out, right?
Mm-hmm. So this is just modeling what has actually happened so far without any predictions for the future. And so, yeah, it says it's negative, and that's because, as Kyle said, we haven't received our full principal back. But, that's okay. That's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
Right. If they stop paying, obviously, we can go through the foreclosure process if we have to. And
Right.
that's one of the great things about investing in real estate is you have that security for your investment.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, I love the visual piece.
We have a lot more content. It as with any skill, knowing how to use your financial calculator is going to take practice and it's going to take work. This is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of education. If this has been enough that you feel like you can actually try some additional stuff out, I'd encourage you to maybe do a little car shopping, right? Just model some simple scenarios that you know all the numbers for, right? Like, this is a car; it's going to cost $25,000, and they're going to give it to me at a 3.2% rate for 7 years, right? So you can figure out what your payment would be, and then but what happens if now my credit isn't quite so good, so they're going to give me at 4.5%? Just run a bunch of scenarios. Get used to running the calculator because, as with any skill, it's going to take practice to get good. And anything you don't use, you will lose.
Right, just for fun. Take your financial calculator and go pretend like you're going to buy a car and run them through the ringer. Like, why would I pay that percentage? And I'm ultimately paying this amount of money? It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can leave me in here and you think I'm sweating, but I'm just playing Angry Birds or whatever while you're out there pretending to talk to your manager. Yeah, you can do the whole thing if you want to burn a Saturday, I guess.
Well, that part doesn't sound fun. I like the math part.
Yeah.
Well, how can they find the app and where?
So the app is available on the iOS App Store, the Android App Store for Google Play, as well as Amazon's App Store. It's also available for BlackBerry, if you're that one person out there who still has a BlackBerry.
And for Mac.
And it's also available via the Mac App Store. And we are in the process of building a Windows version of it, which will be available via the Windows 8 App Store reasonably soon.
Windows 8 and Windows 10.
And I hear you have a blog to where there's some test questions that people can practice on.
Yeah, so Kyle has written an excellent series of blog posts on our website at inadaydevelopment.com. They're called Money Blog, where he goes through some real-world scenarios and shows you how these time value of money problems can show up in your normal life as well as your investing life, and how to use the financial calculator to analyze the situation. Great Aunt Mildred unfortunately passes away and leaves you an inheritance. What's the best way to take care of, Mildred's legacy to benefit the family?
What are you going to do? You're going to go out and buy a Ferrari, or are you going to just sit on that and chip away at the mountain, or are you going to maybe buy some properties that will provide cash flow so you never have to touch the mountain?
Or more complicated than that, do you take that money and pay off your current mortgage so that you're saving money every month, or do you invest it in buying a house that will generate cash flow over time? And so
what's the differential there?
Yeah.
There are a lot of different problems, and
There
a lot of them are very multi-step,
Right.
Which don't let that put you off. You can just do one at a time.
Just take some time. It's fine.
That's real life. That's real life.
And so
you eat the elephant one bite at a time. It's okay.
Very
right.
cool.
So the calculator, the name of it is the 10B2 Financial Calculator.
10BII.
Spelled 10BII. And you can search for that on basically any app store, and you'll be able to find it. As I said, our website is inadaydevelopment.com. And if people have any questions about how to use their calculator, we're very happy to help. You can email us at theteam@inadaydevelopment.com.
Or if you don't want to wait for our reply, down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a button that says Help. And shockingly, that button is where you would go to get help with how to use your calculator. So there are a bunch of videos and stuff there. So I think we have 22 or 25 videos that basically walk you through every different thing that you can do with the calculator. So
That's cool.
How do I calculate N? How do I calculate IYR? How do I set my payments per year? How do I do begin end mode? What does that even mean? How do I do unevens? There are so many videos there. Like you'll do yourself a favor by you won't have to wait for our reply if you just read through there or just watch those videos, and they're each like maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, and They use an older interface than this one, but all the buttons are in the same place, and they all operate the same.
Okay.
And in addition to that, in addition to all of the great content that you're hosting here, there, as you mentioned, Bill Tan, he runs a great calculator class. Gary Johnston and Clyde Wilson, they run fantastic calculator classes. We highly recommend all of them.
Yep, taken both and well worth it, and a few times.
Labor Day in Orange County is typically when they do their financial freedom principles.
Yeah. What is Gary Johnston's website?
It's GaryJohnston.com.
Okay, and then BillTanInvestments.com is Bill. So yeah, definitely, they're probably two of the most respected guys who sort of are in this space, and well worth the time.
Yeah, well worth the time. Definitely well worth the money.
Yeah, and people often take it several times because, especially Bill Tan's class, gets it's just a lot to absorb.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get on to part 2. This was part 1, and we'll come back for part 2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.